Do you regard black magic as being purely fictitious, or is there some truth in it?
Some truth. 100% truth. There is nothing fictitious about black magic, in any way whatever. It is a fact. It is a fact which has existed for several thousand years. I mean, when we talk about black magic, we are talking about Satanism, necromancy, alchemy, witchcraft, the worship of Satan.
Okay, so this is the next part to the Occult 101 English language series. We're on the third segment now, and we're going to be looking at how number 33 is used, some of its metaphysical implications and its importance in history and the occult. In the previous part we discussed the number 26 and its relevance to the English language. We know the English language was standardized at 26 characters, and in the previous video I showed you how 26 tied in with money, and we're going to continue along this theme just with the 33. So first things first, a little background on the 33. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the frequency that this number is used and just the popularity of this number in general. It's commonly seen alongside the term Kundalini. Now I'm sure you're all aware of Kundalini. It's a pretty basic New Agey teaching. Talks about the rising of the Kundalini in the spine, which is also known as the serpent energy. It goes up our spine, coils like a double helix into our third eye, further up into our crown chakra that sits just above our heads, and as a result of this process your third eye is quote unquote open. Kundalini is synonymous with enlightenment through the opening of the pineal gland, and many people, not just mystics, have spoken about this idea before. You may also have heard of the idea of Christ consciousness, which also talks about the same sort of rising of the Kundalini and becoming Christ through the Christos, which is the oil, which if you are familiar with the work of Jordan Maxwell, you know how he ties in the etymology of the word Christ back to the word oil, which goes back to the sacred secretion of the oils in the spine, which again ties into this idea of Kundalini. This can also be seen in many different Bible stories actually, but the most prominent being Jacob's ladder. And the general theme of this story is that there is a holy ladder or a stairwell that leads man to God, obviously metaphysically representing the rising of the Kundalini up the spine. So a little more on the pineal gland, because this is important here. This symbol right here is very important. The jewel serpent coiling around the stick, or the phallus, or the shaft, or the spine, reaching the pine cone, which of course represents our pineal gland. So the rod and the pine cone are synonymous with our spine and our pineal gland. Now this symbol is called the caduceus, and you'll see it mostly presented as a medical symbol, and they say it's an ode to the Greek god of medicine. It's a common theme with everything. You see many times on this channel I've shown how many symbols go back to Greek gods. Everything goes back to fucking Greeks apparently. However, this may be one reason, but it is not the true reason, and the real meaning behind the snake and the staff is what I've just explained to do with the Kundalini. Now I've shown this image previously, but I just wanted to reiterate. So this is St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. Now it has 32 archways on each side of the courtyard, with a giant obelisk in the middle representing the 33rd, symbolizing the spine, or again the phallus. The Pope's cassock actually has 33 buttons. The Soviet Union emblem has 28 emanating rays under a 5-pointed star, with a hammer and a sickle in the middle, and we all know about that hammer and sickle, right? Old Saturn. Many different prayer dates have also happened on March the 3rd, which again is written 33. So all of these here are just references to the 33. So St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope's cassocks, the Soviet Union flag. There's so many examples of this, I'm just naming off a few. So yeah, many different prayer days have also been held on March the 3rd, which is written 33. The UN also did this in 2003, so that would have been a 333 date. The UN ceiling in the General Assembly also has a large circle light in the middle, surrounded by 32 smaller ones. So again, the idea, the 32 individuals with the 33 in the middle. Common theme. The UN flag is also a map of the flat earth, and that is a topic for a different video, but the important point here is that the map is divided into 33 sections. And also notice that this flag is blue. It's important because, much like the first 3 blue degrees of Masonry, could go on about this 33 all day. It is encoded all over the place, all over DC, all over the White House, all over the dollar bill. I'm sure you know that. They are completely obsessed with it. Notice the 13 here as well in this image. That's another number that they're obsessed with. You see it alongside the number 33 quite a lot actually. As you can see here, the York Rite Masonry consists of 13 degrees, while Scottish Rite Masonry goes all the way up to 33 degrees. Now, our measuring system originated in Masonic France in the 1970s, which explains why 13 inches is equal to 33 metric centimeters, and that is why the numbers are always seen paired together. It's also not a coincidence that ice freezes and changes back to water at 32 degrees. Also, corresponding with Masonic degrees of illumination, since every high-level Mason who has not quote-unquote proven himself is frozen at 32 degrees. And once he reaches the 33rd, then he can move freely through the Brotherhood because he's not frozen anymore. He's essentially become the sun. He's melted at the 33. And the very idea of measuring heat by degrees is Masonic in and of itself, as a college and university degrees. And even the very phrase, the 3rd degree, comes from the Masonic 3rd degree ceremony, in which candidates must answer very probing personal questions. So as you can see here, Masons have a hand in a lot of things that you probably wouldn't think. Now, one of the main symbols of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, who remember their rankings go up to 33, is the phoenix, which is also found on the dollar bill. It has 32 feathers on the right wing, symbolising the 32 formal degrees of Scottish Rite Masonry. However, the left wing has an extra feather, making 33, which is an ode to the illuminated. There's a bunch of crazy shit encoded in the dollar bill. They've even got the little owl on there, which is to do with Moloch. You can see people have dug real deep into this. Now, it was said that Albert Pike created the 33rd degree of Scottish Rite Masonry in 1832. And if you don't know who this man is, he wrote a book called Morals and Dogma, which is essentially like a Masonic Bible. He's a highly, highly venerated magician, and I suggest you research him, as he's a very interesting man. And some even credit him as the first to introduce the Luciferian doctrine into the Masonic practice. And he was also responsible for the KKK. And notice that K is the 11th letter, so KKK is simply 11 times 3. Which is 33. So KKK is just another ode to the 33. And check this out, I found this interesting as well. I found this while I was making this video. The Bank of America logo is basically 3 11s, right? So 3 Ks. If you just turn it on its side, all those lines, 3 11s, and considering the US monetary system is run by racist psychopaths, I think that's just about as apt as it gets. Now, bearing in mind what I've just told you about Albert Pike and the KKK and the Bank of America symbol, don't you find it funny that their names match in 2 ciphers? Since we all know that high-ranking CEOs in banking systems are initiated, whether or not they're Masons is completely besides the point. They're all initiated into a certain system of arcane or esoteric philosophies, and believe me, 33 is venerated in all of these. So it really is no surprise that this shit's got the same match into the same ciphers. Literally, Pike has got to be one of the most famous Masons of all time. The man has a huge statue erected of him in the middle of Washington. Now, just with some references to the Bible, I don't want to harp on about this because this stuff's kind of been gone over by other people. Joseph was 33 when he married the Virgin Mary. Jesus performed 33 miracles. God's name was mentioned 33 times in Genesis. The 33rd person in Jesus' lineage from Adam is King David. We all know the importance of King David. The Bible states that King David reigned in Jerusalem for 33 years. Jesus was 33 years old when he died on the cross, which was also in 33 AD. The 33rd time Noah's name is used in scripture is when God makes a special covenant or a promise with him. And we also had that very, very strange 33-day Pope, John Paul I. That shit was weird as fuck, man. That was one big ritual. Yeah, I'm not going to bore you with all the details and biblical references to 33 because, you know, there's a lot and you can research that in your own time. I'm just trying to make a point here. I was also going to go over some of the key events in 33, like Hitler's rise to power, the Reichstag, the repeal of Prohibition, construction of the Golden Gate Bridge, the Great Depression, because again, there's a lot. However, it's kind of mundane and you can research that stuff quite easily on your own. So what I do want to focus on is the 33rd parallel. So if you've never heard of the 33rd parallel, it is obviously a parallel that runs across the Earth. And the powers that be have planned events and geographical locations around the 33rd northern parallel in particular for a long motherfucking time now. Most of the world's wealth is stored north of the 33rd parallel, and major financial centres north of the 33rd parallel include London, New York, Chicago and Switzerland. One of the major historical facts is that the entire system of satanic law germinated in Babylon, which is located precisely on the 33rd parallel. And until the time of the Grecan Empire, the centre of powers was south of the 33rd degree, held by Egypt and Babylon. So you see this centralised idea of power always concentrated around this 33rd parallel. And it does have some other names. The 33rd parallel is also known as Earth's Bloodline, the Dragon Energy Line, the Curse Line, the Line of Mysticism, or the most powerful ley line. Now, the 33-degree line of latitude that runs north of the equator, it goes across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Ocean, North America, and Atlantic Ocean, straight through Bermuda Triangle as well, of course. And a ton of history-changing events have taken place along this parallel, more than any other parallel in the world. And I'm going to play a video now, just to sort of give you some visuals to this idea of this 33rd parallel. Kennedy was assassinated on the 33rd parallel, like it said. Franklin D. Roosevelt died near the 33rd parallel. It mentioned that the first nuclear weapon was detonated New Mexico, 33rd parallel, and it was in fact the 33rd president of the United States that targeted 2 Japanese cities for nuclear bombs, both located near the 33rd parallel. Parallel 33 also acts as a junction between the river Tigris and Euphrates. It was there where the ancient Sumerian civilization was centered and where the Bible suggests that the Garden of Eden was. Like it showed in the video as well, Damascus is located on the 33rd parallel. And in the Book of Enoch, Mount Hermon is the place where the Watcher class of fallen angels descended onto Earth. Mount Hermon is also located on parallel 33. And just to top it off, both the Oklahoma City bombing and the Waco massacre sites are on the 33rd parallel. So I do implore you to bring up Google Earth and punch in some coordinates and just have a look at the different stuff that sits around the 33rd parallel, because there is an undeniable amount of evidence that suggests that there's a lot more going on than what actually meets the eye. Okay, so in the next video we're going to focus on the Gematria side of things, and I wanted to give you an overview of some aspects of the 33. You'll see it in the news daily, especially to do with coronavirus, and to prove my point, I just googled this shit right now and pulled up these documents, and I found multiple stories. It's just ridiculous, and this one here even added the Sunday, and Sunday being the only day that sums to 33. Like I said, part 2 will focus more on the Gematria side of things. This was just a little overview, but a little preview for next video, what we're going to be talking about. So you guys have heard of arsenic, right? It's a known chemical compound. It's famous for being particularly deadly to humans. Essentially, arsenic is the perfect weapon for an assassin. And if you didn't know, arsenic became so popular with Italian politios that it was officially recognized as the method of assassination. So, arsenic sums to 33 and has an atomic number of 33. Which is absolutely no surprise, and there's tons of connections like this, and I'll be digging more into them in my next video.